The Starlight Pact. Chapter 1. The Falling Star. The fire was the only light in the endless forest, crackling and popping, while shadows danced on the listeners' faces. The old man leaned forward, eyes flickering with reflected flame. They say it happened on a night like this. Cold, too quiet, the wind didn't blow. Even the animals went silent, as if they knew what was coming. He stirred the coals, sending a spray of orange sparks up into the black sky. A band of travelers made camp here, telling jokes, sharing wine, trying to forget how far they were from any village. But the forest doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive. Just when their laughter was loudest, the sky split with green fire. He glanced around at the silent circle. Not a shooting star. No, this thing fell too slow, trailing smoke that burned cold and left the trees coated in frost. It hit with a thunder that shook the ground and snuffed out their fire for a moment. They were blind, deafened. When they could see again, the glow of the impact lit the forest in sickly colors. He lowered his voice. They should have stayed by the fire, but curiosity is a poison. They followed the light, through twisted branches, past pools of icy water that steamed in the dark, until they found it. A crater, blackened soil, shattered roots, and at its heart, a cracked sphere of glass that pulsed like a dying heart. A gust of wind rattled the branches. They heard it before they saw it. A voice without words, bleeding straight into their minds, begging, pleading. One of them, Alara, stepped closer, against every warning from her friends. She pressed her hand to the glass, and it opened like a flower. He let the silence grow heavy. Inside was light given form, liquid silver, dancing in shapes that hurt to watch. It wrapped around her wrist, and in that moment, it made a pact. It poured its need into her, promised power in return for rescue. She said yes, whispered it without knowing why. He sat back, face grave, and in that single promise, she doomed them all. The Starlight Pact. Chapter 2. The Binding. The fire spat and crackled as the old man paused, eyes scanning the dark around them, as if making sure nothing listened too closely. They say Alara didn't scream when it touched her. The others wanted to run, but something held them there. The thing wasn't flesh, it was light and memory. It showed them worlds, skies with 3 moons, oceans of crystal, cities grown from living stone. It told them it was lost, broken, needed them. He stirred the fire with a stick, sending sparks skittering into the dark. Some turned to flee, but they were too late. The forest had changed. Paths they knew were gone. The trees seemed to move, closing in. And that voice, inside their heads, kept pleading, weeping, promising it would give them anything if they helped. Knowledge, power, safety, home. He lowered his voice. Even those who wanted to refuse felt it tugging at their hearts. Their fear, their hope. It didn't just speak. It understood them. When Alara finally agreed, truly agreed, it sealed the pact. It sank into her arm like molten metal, left black lines spiraling beneath her skin. She fell to her knees, convulsing. The others could only watch. He shifted on the log, eyes distant. She stood up changed, eyes glowing with starfire. She smiled at them, but it wasn't her smile. It was too calm, too certain. She told them they were going to rebuild the ship, that it had shown her how. All they needed was time, materials, sacrifice. The wind moaned through the trees. They wanted to refuse, wanted to leave her behind, but the forest wouldn't let them. The paths twisted back to the crater no matter which way they ran. And at the center of it all was Alara, watching them with those alien eyes, waiting for them to accept what they'd become part of. He leaned closer to the fire. And that was how the binding began. A promise that could not be undone. A promise the forest itself had heard. The Starlight Pact, Chapter 3, The Construction. The flames were low now, just embers casting a dull red glow. The old man's voice dropped to a hush, forcing them all to lean closer. They had no choice. The forest itself conspired against them. Trails led nowhere but back to the crash. Food spoiled, water turned black with ash. They were trapped with her, and with it. He poked the coals gently. Alara didn't sleep anymore. She spoke with the thing inside her, whispering to the trees, drawing symbols in the dirt that glowed and smoked. She directed them to tear metal from the wreck, to twist it into new shapes. They didn't want to, but their bodies betrayed them. Their hands moved on their own, guided by dreams the creature sent them. A wind sighed through the trees, as if listening. It taught them things no human should know, how to melt metal with words, how to bind circuits with blood. They cut themselves willingly, letting the ship drink their life to power its rebirth. Their eyes grew strange, veined with silver. Voices fell into unison, chanting things they forgot the moment they stopped. The old man shook his head slowly. They worked for days, weeks. Time stopped meaning anything. The forest grew silent as a tomb. Even the wind didn't dare disturb them. When the hull was complete, Alara stood in the doorway, wearing it like armor. She wasn't Alara anymore. She was the vessel. He glanced around the dark. The creature spoke through her mouth, thanked them, promised them release, promised it would remember their gift. But they were too far gone to care. They had given everything, even their names. When the ship finally rose on pillars of sick green fire, they fell to the ground, empty. The embers hissed. The forest swallowed the crater, grew over it, hid it away. But if you dig deep enough, you can still find twisted metal in the roots. And if you listen closely at night, you can hear her voice calling, asking for help. He lifted his eyes, firelight dancing in them. And you'll want to help, even if you know better. The Starlight Pact, Chapter 4, The Return. The fire was nearly out, its glow reduced to coals that pulsed like dying stars. The old man's face was just a silhouette, his voice ragged and low. Years passed, the forest healed on the surface. Grass grew over the crater. Animals returned. Travelers stopped fearing it, but it never forgot. It waited, because promises don't die. Not really. He let the silence hang, the wind sighing through the trees like an old breath. Generations later, another group came. Hikers, they called themselves. They laughed around their bright new lanterns, took pictures, drank from silver flasks. They thought they were safe, thought the old stories were just that, stories. He ran a hand over his face. But the ground remembered. One night, one of them found the metal. Just a scrap, half buried among roots, cold as ice even in summer. He picked it up, heard something, like a song underwater. He brought it back to camp, waving it around like a trophy. The others laughed, but unease spread through them like poison. The old man's voice cracked. That night, they heard footsteps in the dark. Not animals, not human, heavy, careful, watching. The trees felt closer. The wind began to whisper in a voice they almost understood. And that piece of metal pulsed with a sick light. It was waiting for someone to say it. He swallowed hard. One of them, Sarah, she said it. She said, "I'll help you," as a joke. And that was all it needed. The wind stopped. The fire died, and the forest listened. A log shifted, collapsing in on itself with a final shower of sparks. By morning, the camp was empty. Nothing left but the burned circle and her footprints, walking deeper into the woods. They say she's still out there, part of it now, waiting for the next promise, the next fool who will listen. He fell silent, the night pressing in from all sides. "So remember this," he rasped at last. "If you see green fire in the sky or hear a voice asking for help when no one's there, don't answer, don't promise, because it remembers, and it never stops looking for a way home."